Hi, good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining for our PatternFly demo today. We'll go ahead and jump right into it. In our agenda, which has been posted in the chat, you'll see a link to our YouTube channel where you can see all of our demo recordings and also a link to this meeting should you want to share it out, as well as our forum. Should any questions come up today, and we always have a lot of activity on the forum and we really encourage conversation there. So please feel free to go ahead and start new threads there with any questions you have that come up. After our meeting today, I'll post this meeting on our YouTube channel. And that will be sent out to our mailing list, and feel free to forward that on to anyone you think would be interested. All right, so to kick us off on CSS, Christy has a number of enhancements that we've added to our core site.
Hey everyone. So this sprint, first thing I worked on is the divider component. So it's in our experimental features. Basically, I think we have like 4 components where we use a separator or like a divider. So we wanted to create a shared component that would be easier to maintain. And now we can also use the divider in like demos, like in the card demo or the page demo. And basically the default is an HR, so a horizontal rule. And then if you want to use it with like an li or a div, you would just add a role equal separator so that accessibility wise, it's known to be a separator. The next thing is a switch. So originally it could only work with a font size of medium. So all of these values were just hard coded. So now you can update the font size of the switch. So like the switch, this entire piece here. And it's responsive. So change to extra small or like 2XL. And so now everything's like the width, the height, the toggle, this font size, the icon, the padding, it's all based on the font size that you set on the switch. This one is a bit of housekeeping. So we had some bugs where we'd have like a min width and a max width set on the same breakpoint. And so now, just to make everything mobile first, I updated all of the max widths to be min widths. So that should fix those issues there. The next thing, so we've always had a modifier for PFM wrap that you could apply to TH or TDs, but we didn't have an example to show like how table headers wrap. So by default, they don't wrap, they'll extend out as long as they are. But if you want them to wrap, you can add PFM wrap to the THs, and they'll go like that. The next thing is we had a max height set on the nav, like 600 pixels. So we replaced that with 100%. So now you could add as many list items in here, and you'll just have one scroll bar, like you wouldn't have 2. And the next thing is, say you want to set like a width on the drop down. This is now set to space between. So you'll have text on the left and you'll have your arrow on the right, no matter how large the drop down is. And then if you have like a PFM plane variation, it'll be set to the center. And that's all for me.
Great, thanks, Christy. And Michael Coker for CSS as well.
Hello, I share my screen. Okay, first up, this is just a quick thing. We renamed the data table demo in the workspace in the PatternFly website to table, so that it's less confusing, just to align with the component name. So if you were used to finding the data table demo underneath data list, it's now renamed to table. And then up next was the plain variation of our select component. We didn't offer this before. It's basically the same variation that you would find in the drop-down menu or options menu or other menus that are similar. It's basically where your toggle will normally have this form control style border with like a blue line at the bottom. The plain variation just removes that border. And so you just get a plain text toggle with a toggle icon. Then up next is a new experimental feature It's a drawer component. This will be used in combination with the upcoming notification drawer, but this is just a component that you can use for other purposes as well. And you'll find it under the experimental section of the website under drawer, and you can see it here. This is with the drawer closed, so there's nothing to see, but you can inspect the code and see how everything is structured. It basically just takes two elements. One element is the thing that you want the drawer to appear on top of or in relation to, and then the other element is the drawer content itself. And so here's an example with the drawer expanded on top of content, and then there's another variation where the drawer expands in line with the content, and so it pushes the content over to display the drawer beside it. And we have demos of it as well. You'll find it under the demos section, just drawer. And here as an example of the drawer being used in context of the page component, where similar to how the notification drawer will eventually appear, this is just the main page section as the content for the drawer component, and then here's the drawer panel itself that would display on top of the page. And then last is that we added, I'm sorry.
Sorry to interrupt. I just wanted to add in there, since you were demoing experimental, just give some context for that for anyone who might not be aware of that concept. PatternFly has introduced something called experimental to our workflow, and the whole goal of it is to be able to get feedback early on from different teams, designers, developers on the not only the code but also the design of it. And once it's introduced as experimental, it's not part of PatternFly proper yet. So we have the ability and flexibility to take feedback, make breaking changes without having to make breaking changes by release. So we're working on a blog post to explain more about this and that workflow and how we will communicate out about it. But definitely just wanted to give you guys more insight into what that experimental is.
Great, thanks. And Amy, I saw your question about the mechanism for opening and closing the drawer. Currently, this is just the drawer itself. We don't have a mechanism for opening and closing it. As the way that you implement the drawer, you might have a different mechanism depending on what it is that you're toggling. So currently in the demo, we just showed the HTML structure and the markup needed for both the section that you are going to display the drawer in relation to and the drawer itself. And we show how you would create that markup in the different states. And so as this component makes its way to React, we'll probably show a demo that shows a mechanism for opening and closing it. In the core workspace anyways, we just have the HTML and CSS and no JavaScript interaction. For something to open and close the drawer, it would require JavaScript interaction. So we will likely flesh that out in the React demos once we add that component there. And then I know particularly once we create components using the drawer component, that will definitely clearly illustrate what it is that opens and closes. So for example, with a notification drawer, the notification bell icon in the masthead would be the toggle for the drawer panel, and we would build that into the notification drawer component, I presume.
Okay, great. Thank you.
You bet. And then up last is that we added the new Red Hat font to PatternFly. So we've added this as an opt-in option for folks who are using the latest version of PatternFly. In fact, it's in version 2.18.0 if someone is curious. And so you can update to that version of PatternFly. Nothing changes on your front end unless you choose to opt in to using the new font. And the opt-in process is just adding a class to the body or HTML element of your application, or just an element that wraps your application. And the class is pf-m-red hat-font. We're working on a blog post that will illustrate exactly what it is that you need to add to your application to opt into the new font, including the changes that will happen, the versioning, the class that you need to add, all of that sort of stuff. And it's worth noting that the new font does a number of things. It displays more consistently across browsers. So with Overpass currently, we have some issues with the way that text displays in different browsers and operating systems. And so the new font takes care of that. It's more legible. I don't know if you've noticed, sometimes it's hard to notice, but in these demos that I've shown, as well as just in the workspace in general currently, the new font is reflected in these demos in the workspace. And so if you want to look at that, like this should appear more legible in relation to Overpass. And then other parts of Red Hat are also using this font, and so Patternfly now aligns with those parts of Red Hat, including like documentation, sales, marketing, support. And just to illustrate how you would opt into the new font, if you just look here, I have a class, the class that I spoke about earlier, added to the HTML element of this workspace, and so I can just remove that class and you're back to Overpass, or I can add it back and you're using the new Red Hat font. I saw a comment. Oh, okay. Thanks, Jochen. And that's it. Were there any questions?
Great, thanks, Michael. And moving on to Matt Melting. He's going to be going over App Launcher and something we updated to horizontal nav.
My screen?
Yes, we can.
Okay, so just a couple very quick updates, not big. Added a disabled state to the app launcher, shown here. And then also modifiers for aligning right, and aligning top here. And in the horizontal navigation, the focus states before relied on margining. Or they were displaying it correctly because we were relying on margining rather than padding in this example. So the next update is that is now fixed by converting margining to padding and then moving the outline offset inside the list item.
All right, thanks, Matt. And then Dana's going to expand a bit on our experimental component support.
All right, so we've talked about this quite a bit already, so I won't go too far into the rat hole with it. Lost my other browser window. Hold on a second. So as was shown, we've in a few of the demos we added support on the CSS side for experimental components. And let me show my screen so I could just show a little bit more if you happen to be working with them. Just want to show a bit about what's stop, because this is not sharing the way I want to. This is what I get for not on my regular computer. No, it's not going to work. So anyway, it's not going to share. So on the README on Patternfly Next, you'll see some nice information about how to use experimental components. I'm just going to throw the link into the chat so you guys can take a look later, and not to belabor this anymore. The other thing that was not completely mentioned is that the full Patternfly CSS will not include the CSS for these components when it's released. You'll have to get them by opting in. So actually, it's in the NPM package if you want to use it, but you have to pull the CSS directly for those components, not full Patternfly CSS. And that's something that we'll explain in an upcoming blog post, as Leslie mentioned. So that's all. Hopefully it provides a good avenue for us to get feedback on things without locking down the API or the component too early on. And that's it for me.
Great. Thanks, Dana. And Tatani on the React side.
Yeah, I'm going to give a readout of the issues we completed in React. A lot of the time, some of the issues we work on are not demonstrable. So just to show what's completed this iteration, I'll share these slides. Okay, so in Sprint 86, we completed or closed 25 issues. We closed an issue for the table pagination input field had weird behavior. So now it lets the user enter numbers in the input field. We added support for experimental React components. We added the ability for the select component to render custom children. The modal now traps focus. Then we fixed the get modal container from state to set onset aria hidden issue. And then now the about modal traps focus. The charts added a bottom left legend position. The grid component was converted to TypeScript. We removed the ARIA label from the checkbox in the login page. The title component is now used in the donor chart. The tabs now allows for event key to accept a string. The chart tooltip colors are now correct. Chart tooltip is now responsive. The empty state didn't allow DOM nesting, and now we updated that so it does. Charts provide accessible title and description. The area chart example was tweaked. We implemented overflow styles for secondary tabs. We're now able to click the options menu item. Before we weren't able to click an option. Select does not render children when changed after initialization has been fixed. Add individual padding bars for download charts. README for badges was updated. And we created a new multicolor theme for order charts. And there were no exported members of the compound expand for React table. That's been fixed. The spaces between the badges has been fixed. I think it's in the docs. And we updated the examples in our React workspace to use the new Red Hat typography. And that's where we completed this iteration. That's it for me.
Great. Thank you so much, Tatani. And Jenny's going to cover a number of issues that she completed in React as well.
Hey, everybody. First thing that I did for the sprint was in options menu. There was a bug that did not trigger select on the whole item in options menu. So if you see here, before, whenever you clicked on options menu, you could deselect it by clicking on this check here. But now it's working, and you can click wherever you need to on the item, and it works just fine. So there are a couple examples here that had that problem. So I resolved that. So that was the first thing. The next thing I was up to was fixing some unit tests. So there were some failing tests in util.test.js. So I was working with Jeff Phillips, who was giving me some feedback there as to how to go about fixing that, and the tests are now passing, so everything looks good there. I was also working on dropdown. So this is, I think, an issue that was recently opened by Jen, and I just, I think, made a PR for this a few days ago, but this adds an ARIA label to the icon only example for dropdown. And yeah, so I'm still waiting for reviews on this one, but that's finished as well. Login form. This was a follow-up to another issue that I think was merged recently, and that just removed a deprecated prop from the login form component. So I think that's awaiting a breaking change release, but that's up as well. I've also been working on jest tests. So I've been working closely with Patrick Riley here, and one of the things I did was add a jest test for virtualized table. So this is a new test that I added here. It's in TypeScript, and that's, I think, been rebased into Patrick's React tables epic, I think, that he's working on. So that's something else. In addition to follow up on this related issue, I was also converting I was helping him convert the React table directory to TypeScript. So one of the things I was working on was converting the table test to TypeScript, and I believe that he rebased these changes as well into his branch. And but yeah, I'm still sort of in touch with him on that, and that's something that I'll be working on for the rest of the week as well. And then for the past few days, I've been working on the select component. There were a few bugs there that in the input box that didn't allow you to, here, let me show you actually. So now you can see that there was a bug that was resolved recently in core that lets you type into or click on the input box and the input is activated. So now that that's fixed, you can trap focus. And what I was working on is that initially when you did click on it, the menu would expand. And then when you type something and then backspaced, it would hide it, I think. So that's what I was working on. So what I did was I added a change that would keep it open regardless of the state, like even if there's nothing in the input box. So I have a PR for that up as well. And then the other thing with select was that, oh, okay. So the other thing was that when you type an input, the box stays open and it filters out text based on what you're typing in. So I think that was something that disappeared in the TypeScript conversion that was recently merged. So that's something that I was able to get back up. And yeah, that's it for me. Thanks to everyone who helped me out with all of this. I really appreciate it.
Awesome. Thanks, Jenny. And Jesse.
Hey everyone, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here. All right, so basically I wanted to give a quick update. I know we've talked a lot about the TypeScript conversion, but I basically just wanted to let you guys know that we now have layouts converted, which includes the bullseye, gallery, grid, level, split, stack toolbar. And also with that, we've been able to kind of solve a lot of issues that had come up with types. So just to give a quick update on that. I also kind of wanted to share some styling things we've done. We've added a compact card variation to the React side. It's basically just the normal card, but with the compact smaller there. And I've also added overflow styles to the secondary tabs. And to see what that looks like right here, there's kind of like a shadow and the arrow. And as you cycle through, you can see it on both sides. So yeah, I know it's just a quick little thing I wanted to share with you guys, and that's all I have today.
Awesome. Thank you. And Katie?
All right, let me share my screen. Here we go. So I just wanted to give a brief update and demo of the previously mentioned custom option display for select. So our examples here, you'll by default be using the value which is passed in, and in the code you can see this here. It just uses the value and that's what's displayed. The change is that now you can, if you want to have a different display from this string value, like say in a div or in any kind of other wrapper, or if you wanted to have an icon, you could include that here. And if we look back up here, now the test/option is chosen and it will update even in the display. To give a few more examples, this was in our TypeScript demo. You can see now that this is a bunch of different nested divs, spans with icons, etc., and they will all render properly when you click on them. And in the case for type ahead select, the chips are also going to be updated with the display as well. And if you filter, oops, it will basically stringify the whatever's in the div. It will ignore the icons when it's doing the type ahead filtering, and you'll be able to select them.
Great, thanks, Katie. And Michael Spaxman on PFC project updates.
Good morning. So, yeah, we've been doing some work over in the Seed project. For anyone that's not familiar, PatternFly Seed is kind of a get started quick application for getting you running with a build system, testing framework, code quality tools, all that good stuff for PatternFly applications. So a recent thing that we did was add Chrome and routing. So the Chrome is any persistent parts of the web page, like the header and the main sidebar here. So we added that in. So if you clone the project and just run it right out of the box, this is what you'll get. The routing is basically having support for actually changing navigation. So notice the URL updates to reflect what route you're on. So that's great. This will help a lot of people get going faster and keep people from having to rework the same parts of the code base that they will always run into from the get-go. So a couple things about it. I'm using the development server right now, so I want to just point out that we've got the support for code splitting now. So you've got the ability to have components that will have all of the JavaScript modules and any other assets like CSS or images, anything like that. You can have all that bundled in the main bundle, but if you have a big part of your application that you don't want to load all of that stuff until you actually hit that route, you can do that now. So what I mean by that is, or rather a way to show that is if you look at this network tab, notice the assets we've got pulled down here. I'm going to select this support link. Notice only at this point in time did we actually pull the JavaScript related to this support bundle. If I inspect the styles that are being included on this route, we'll see I've just used the standard empty state example here. If you track it back to where it's coming from, you'll find that it's being injected using React Core in all the standard way that we're used to. It's automatically embedded. Where you really start to see the benefit is if you do a production build. So I just switched to this next tab. I've run a full build and just running this on an Nginx server. I'll basically run through that same exercise again. So I'll select the support tab and notice we get two things added. So not just the support JavaScript, but actually the any style sheets that have been imported into that code split module will be now extracted into their own style sheet. So this is great for tracing back, where did some styles come from? And if we inspect this same empty state component, now we see it's not just pointing to, the development style sheet, but rather we actually get the full support bundle. And so this is great for traceability. Another thing that we added was support for 404 routes. So I just basically I stubbed out a navigation link that would just point to a bogus URL that we don't have. And so you see I've basically just stubbed out what a 404 page could look like. This is not a PatternFly recommended 404 page. This is just kind of showing you, hey, put your 404 stuff here. The other thing that's probably interesting that I wanted to show is just basically this main couple of pages that are files in the seed project. So this is the main entry point to the application. We'll see we're using React Router DOM. We're using the browser router as the main element. As an immediate child of that, we've got an app layout. This seems to be an emerging pattern that we're seeing in a lot of applications. So we basically pulled everything about what it means to be a page in PatternFly, and we put that into a separate component. This is great if you have an application that needs to have multiple types of page layouts. If you need to use one layout for certain sections of your app based on some business logic, you can put all that right there. So you got your app layout, and then we just pass the routes through to the layout. So the routes are very simple. It's standard React router stuff. The last thing I'll point out very quickly is how we work the code splitting. So basically, if you look at dashboard, this is a standard, like a normal component, if you will. This component will be included in the main bundle for the application. If you look at dashboard, it's nothing special. It's just a function component. But then we look at support. How is that one done differently? So it still basically gets imported as a normal component, if you will, but then we wrap it in this helper. So basically, if you want a code split route, just follow this pattern. Basically, this little comment will make sure it gets the proper naming when you do a full build and things like that. Yeah, I think that's the main bits. Anyone has questions, I'd be happy to take them now. Otherwise, I'll return it back.
Okay, thanks so much, Michael. And Tatani's going to cover Red Hat fonts.
All right. So I updated the React docs so that it matches core, and we're using the new Red Hat fonts. So this is our demo page, and is now using the new Red Hat fonts, so it matches what we have in core. And that's pretty much it.
Great, thanks, Tatani. And Jakob?
Hello. Okay, so there was a requirement that came down from the Red Hat Management QE team that they would like our library to support something called the Open Web UI Design Specification for Enabling Automation, OUIA. And basically what this specification is for, it basically would add some additional attributes to our React components, such that testing libraries would be able to track those widgets across pages. So first of all, here's the PR with the proposed changes. It goes over how you would add these capabilities to our existing library components. And the way to do this would be to essentially wrap your component in this higher order component called with OUIA context. And that would inject an additional property called OUIA context right here that you can just use to check and like right in your component, you can see if your environment supports this OUIA, and if so, we add some additional attributes. And right now, to enable OUIA for components that have had this change done to them, in this case, I experimented with the switch component. There's two ways to enable it. One is by setting a local storage variable, which I'll show you in a second, and then the other one would be through using a React context. And then it goes over like several different examples and use cases. If you're interested, you can take a look at this. And I think based on some comments, I'm going to make one more change, but this should be ready to go pretty soon. But yeah, just taking a quick peek at an example. Here's the switch component. You can see that on the label, there are no additional attributes right now. It's just our class and a for attribute. But if you want to enable OUIA, you can set a local storage variable right here. Set that to true, and then if you reload, now if we inspect it, you can see that it got some additional attributes here. So it got the component type, which is switch, and then the component ID. And right now, so in this example, the ID is generated, but consumers can also specify their own IDs if they wish to. And the only reason that this is being automatically added is because we have a second local storage variable called generate ID. If I set this to false, or if I don't have it at all, then you wouldn't actually see it, and we would just depend on user-provided IDs, as you can see right here. That's it. Any questions? Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Jakob. And on the infrastructure side, Zach's going to share a couple of updates as well as show us the release notes on the website in progress.
Hello, hello. Right. Get another screen share. You all see my Firefox?
Yes, we can.
Right, I hope so. So first up is I added something to the build for every PR that gets merged. We'll now hopefully get a little comment at the bottom that tells you the package version that got released, so you can go test it. And that should be helpful. So you can go test it in products right away if you make a contribution to React. And then next, I fixed a few things in our repo for Windows support because Don needed it, but also because I kind of wanted to do it so we can get people building React on Windows. So I had to go through all these things. The most major thing was changing our PF3 SAS importer. And the rest of it was just kind of bug fixing and tracking down stuff. And I believe now it builds on Windows. Last time I tried. And hey, look, another example of getting everything published. And lastly, over in org land instead of React land, we're working on creating these release note pages where, again, you see all these versions that constitute a release that we've checked and are the latest have the latest tag on NPM and that we support. So this is kind of moving towards a more long-term support type deal instead of every commit to the repo is a release. And yeah, so this is for React, all the release notes, and then also for Next or Core, we have all the release notes here along with the versions. So working on getting that added to the site for each release. And I believe that's it for infrastructure.
Great, thanks, Zach. And Joachim, was there one last thing on the website here?
Oh, yes. So if we currently go to the PatternFly for Core website right here, and you look at, for example, the Flex layout system, you can see that they provide a lot of additional pieces of documentation. For example, they have an intro, and then also for their examples, they have example-specific documentation like this usage table, some additional information here. So right now for our website, we are actually not pulling in these additional pieces of information. So it's pretty bare bones. And I guess some example documentation and context is missing, so it could be a little bit confusing on how to use these, I guess, as a user. We are just showing the examples straight up. So I've just been working on incorporating these additional pieces of documentation into our website as well, which you can see right here in my local build. So basically similar to the core website, we're displaying intros now if they're available. And then also for your examples, you can have example-specific documentation. And this design that you see right here has not been vetted. I'm going to be working with Rachel on this, but this is just showing you that we are pulling in these additional pieces of information so that they're available for the users now. That's it.
Great, thank you, Joachim. All right, and finally on the research side, Sarah's gonna update us on the light dark theme for navigation research.
So yeah, hey. So at this summit, we did some comparison study on two visual themes. Let me share my screen really quickly.
Hey, Sarah, I think we had a connection issue.
Sarah's not Siri.
Yeah, try telling that to Siri.
Well,
Oh,
sorry, I don't
she's
know
back.
what happened.
As soon as you shared your screen,
We've
you
got
dropped.
you back. We've got you
Oh,
back.
I'm sorry. I don't know what happened. It just like it kicked me out all of a sudden.
It's blue
But
jeans.
anyways, so I'm gonna try to share my screen again. Hopefully this time it won't happen. Okay, can you see my screen now and hear me as well?
Yep.
Yes, we can see your screen.
Okay, cool. All right, cool. I don't know what part you didn't hear. I mean, I was talking about this study is a comparison study that we did at the summit. We looked at this two variations of PatternFly, an older variation and a newer variation. We saw the data from perception, performance, and preference perspective. And so at this point, the question that we have is that which color theme we should go for. And we couldn't answer that question from that research because color wasn't the only factor that was different between those variations. So in a follow-up study that is coming up just this week, we're just going to focus on the color, and we want to see how color affects users' perception, performance, and preference. And if you want to read more about or learn more about the study, there's a blog post here that I shared with you in the chat bar. And so let me know if you have any questions about that research, and we will keep you posted about the latest research that is coming up this week.
Great. Thank you so much, Sarah. All right, that's the end of our agenda today. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining. Again, if you had any questions come up, please feel free to post them on our forum, which is linked in the agenda in the chat, and I'll talk with you in 2 weeks' time. Thanks so much for joining us. Bye, everybody.